Am I the a-hole for choosing my budget over my boyfriend this Halloween? Plus update. Original post. I need some perspective here. This whole thing is so out of control. I, 28 female, own my house and my boyfriend, 29 male, moved in January. We had a ton of early money arguments and agreed that we would keep to a household budget. Also, he agreed to pay down his credit card debt. I have more flexibility in my personal spending than he does. Early after we moved in, my boyfriend told me that as a kid, he always wanted to live in one of the houses that were totally decorated for trick-or-treat and handed out full-size candy. Here's where I messed up. I took this as a comment and not a plan. When the end of September came, we went to the Halloween store and he was under the impression we had savings for this. I didn't know. We go over the monthly budget together and it was never listed. When he found out that there was no Halloween savings, we had an argument. Afterwards, I talked to friends who all said he had talked about trick-or-treat extensively and how much it meant. I chalked this one up to a misunderstanding on my part, so I came up with $500 of my money and went to him with an apology. He decided to buy one big piece, an animatronic clown and some lights, and it burned through the $500. Plus, he put a little on his own credit card. He wanted another big piece and was mad I wouldn't put in on my credit card. I asked if he wanted to put up handmade decorations or spider webs, but he said it would look cheap. A few weeks later, we had a fight over candy. He was still stuck on buying full-size bars. We easily get over 250 trick-or-treaters, and I said we just don't have that much money. So, we got the bulk bags of good small bars. I also have these little coloring books for the allergic and diabetic kids. Jump forward to Halloween. Early kids show up and he's letting them grab handfuls. I reminded him we have a ton of trick-or-treaters coming, and he got really annoyed. I had ordered a pizza for us, so I get it and go inside for about 10 minutes. By the time I came back out, the trick-or-treat bowls were empty. He had been dumping a third of a bowl in each kid's bag, and had given out all the coloring books to whatever kids came along. He then told me that I'd have to go run out and buy more candy on my credit card. I said I wasn't going to do that, and it wasn't my fault he just handed out 20 pounds of candy. He started yelling right there in front of the kids, and I told him to come inside. He responded that he wasn't stopped trick-or-treating even if there was no candy. I told him to have fun with the clown and went inside. He came in 15 minutes later, then demanded I leave for the night so that he could clear his head. He argued it was fair because I had already eaten, and it was my fault that trick-or-treat was ruined because I'm cheap. I handed the rest of the pizza at him and refused. He left and went to a friend's house, and I guess they spent the rest of the night drinking, handing out trick-or-treat candy and texting me how awful and cheap I am. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the update. Not the a-hole. It sounds to me like you're his ATM, not his girlfriend. Seriously, whatever issues he had to create so much credit card debt in the first place have not been resolved. He's fixing to ruin your credit rating, not raise his own. A lot of the debt is understandable. He spent part of his childhood in foster care, and his parents kicked him out when he was 18 with nothing really. He went into debt early to pay for his basic needs, never really learned how to have financial literacy. Only when I pointed it out did he start to pay more than the minimum on his debts, and start to work his way out of it. What does he bring to your relationship though? Does he pay bills, rent, contribute in any way? Or are you trying to save and change him? That's a trap people fall into trying to change their significant other, and it rarely if ever works. You end up wasting half your life on them. The fact he ran and cried to his friend and they texted you, basically how horrible you are, should give you a huge clue into what kind of person your boyfriend is. And it's not good. After we had an argument first month, I set up a monthly house budget that just covers communal things, and he has been contributing his half to it since. So half mortgage, utilities, etc. Because so much of his money is going to debt, I have more flexible personal budget, but I put money into savings. But yeah, financially he pulls his weight, and he spent the summer being compulsive about having a perfect lawn. So it's not like he is useless around a house. He was under the impression we had savings for this. No, he wasn't, because he didn't contribute to any savings for this. He was under the impression you were going to cave and pay for it. And she did too, just not to his expectations. He will never change. And now for the update. I posted an AITA in early November about something that happened with my boyfriend. He had spent a ton of money on Halloween decorations and blamed me for ruining trick-or-treat. I wasn't sure where to post an update, so here I am. Everyone, and I do mean everyone online, basically said I was in the right and said some truly dire things about my relationship. I won't lie, there was so much anger towards him. I sort of shut down. When I started getting requests from actual news sources for more information, I just basically logged out and just decided to forget anything ever happened. We met the next day, as he had spent a few nights at his friend's house. I said that for things to continue, we needed couples counseling, and I expected him to set up the whole thing. He was surprisingly open to this and said he would work on it, and that's where things started to unravel. Our mutual friends had been really in his corner, throwing shades at me. But I found out the story that he had told them was way off from the truth. In his version, I prevented any money for Halloween and had gone cheap on trick-or-treat candy and was only handing it out to children I liked. Once they sort of heard my version, backed up with pictures and receipts, the support went to me. In fact, his friends have been giving him a lot of fibbing about how he acted, which my now ex hates. In the meantime, he had been working on getting us counseling but found that getting therapy on his insurance meant months-long waiting lists. So instead, he came up with this couples coach who was religious. I'm not religious and wasn't thrilled by this, but figured it was better than nothing. Our first meeting was only 3 days after I posted. One funny thing that came up was that my ex immediately handed over a printout of the household budget, and the coach praised it. But the coach thought my ex was the one who wrote it, and that I was failing to follow it. So what followed was this weird thing where my ex wanted all the praise, but also wanted the coach to badmouth the budget because my ex hates it. It took the better part of the first session to explain to him the actual situation, and the coach was weird about the fact that it was the woman in the relationship dictating money, even though he liked the budget itself. This was a lot of issues later, actually. The next day, one of our friends found a Reddit post and sent it to my ex, and all hell broke loose, with him saying that I had betrayed his trust. Our next couples coaching session was all about that, and honestly, I felt terrible for airing his dirty laundry. The coach and my ex both dunked on me a ton in this time, that I had publicly humiliated my ex. Obviously, I'm updating, so I don't care about embarrassing my ex anymore. He has this username and will probably read this. Whatever. One thing that was seemingly positive at first about the coaching was the coach pointed out that my ex had never had the ability to have holiday traditions because of his upbringing. I genuinely felt bad about this, and rolling into Christmas made a huge attempt to incorporate him into my family's traditions and to ask if there's anything he wanted to do. He responded by crapping all over my family's traditions, and his only contribution was to suggest something really extravagant that would have cost a fortune. I swear, he only did this just to badmouth me when I said no. This was all bookended by our twice-a-week visits to the couples coach who I increasingly hated. He would go through super religious prayers and having issue with us living together before marriage. Neither my ex or I responded positively to this, but my ex would get really into it when the coach would talk about more misogynistic men as head of household stuff. When I said I'd prefer moving to a regular therapist, my ex said I was undermining his work getting us help. There's a dozen little things that happened in there where I should have broken up. But last week was the real final straw. Ever since my ex found a post I had made on Reddit, he has been obsessed with going through my phone. But because of my career, I wouldn't let him. I have a lot of emails and accesses on my phone that's sensitive information in regards to my work. I made a compromise that he could ask who I was texting, etc., and I'd show him at any point. This wasn't good enough. I don't know how he got into my phone, but he went through it fully and started raging out that I was keeping things from him. But none of it had any relation to him. Like, I had a group chat where we were planning a wedding shower for a friend. He's only met this friend in passing. He knew I was helping plan it, but was mad that I hadn't let him know every little detail. Specifically, we were surprising the bride by flying in her aunt who she rarely sees. I wasn't contributing to this financially, just knew about it. And somehow my not telling him that specific little thing was keeping secrets? We were still fighting over this when we went to a party with friends. Apparently, in digging through my old chats, he found where a friend of mine had talked to me in confidence of a tragedy she went through. Only her husband and sisters were really in the know. My ex was drunk and started talking about this loudly to her with her husband right there. Her husband told her to shut up, but my ex basically got all superior about knowing things and there not being secrets. It was very close to being a fight. I told him not to come back to my house after that, and he seems really shocked we broke up. I'm still numb about all of this. But yeah, him? Never again. I remember that post. I'm sorry that he was such a loser. That whole Halloween thing was so weird and whiny of him, and absolutely zero of the update is a surprise. It's so hard to imagine being the person posting these stories and hearing such a unanimous denunciation of your significant other. I can't imagine being able to break up with someone over the opinions of strangers, but that guy was bunk. I'm really glad that you're free of that controlling person, and I hope that he gets the help he needs. He won't, but we can say the words. I just went back and reread your first post. Just wanted to add, I'd completely forgotten about that weird $500 lawn clown. I guess you can too now. Too bad you can't return the X and hopefully get a refund. I remember you. I knew exactly who you are before I went and reread your first post. First, I'm glad you broke up. You really do deserve better. I know your ex probably had some good traits, but his inability to budget, inability to take responsibility, and his overwhelming sense of entitlement doomed your relationship. It sounds like his time in foster care damaged him, and he is trying to fill that emotional void by buying expensive things for himself. Please don't let him love bomb you into taking him back. He will promise everything under the sun, that he will change, follow a budget, get counseling, etc. But the truth is that he definitely needs counseling, but he needs to get it because he wants it for himself, not to keep a relationship with you. Because right now, he really doesn't see anything with how he is, and he will do the minimum to keep you hooked in and then slide into his old ways. He is not mature enough to be in a relationship, and you will not be doing him any favors by taking him back. He needs to figure out how to be an adult and manage his life on his own. Also, he sounds quite capable of taking out loans or credit cards behind your back, and I would definitely advise you to keep an eye on your credit score. Good luck, and I wish you many internet hugs. This is a pretty nice community, and you are welcome to check in for support anytime. Yes, 1000% freeze your credit OP. If he snooped in your phone, you have no idea what else he snooped in. I would also recommend changing your passwords and updating your security questions to information he doesn't know. He's probably not going to do anything, but why risk it when prevention is so easy? Last story. Am I the a-hole for leaving my boyfriend and his friends behind after agreeing to be the designated driver? My 33 female boyfriend, 33 male of 4 years, is a big football fan, and he has a tradition of meeting up with his high school friends at a bar for Super Bowl every year. It's often the only time in a year he gets to see some of these friends because they're busy with their families and life. I don't like football, so I'm happy to be able to drop him off somewhere, have an evening to myself, and pick him up when he's ready to come home. He tends to go hard with the alcohol when he's out with his group. Last night, my boyfriend texted me that he was almost ready to be picked up, so I headed to the bar. He wasn't as ready as he made it seem, so I ended up going in and sitting down with them while everyone finished their rounds of drinks. He was pretty drunk, and he started getting handsy in a way that I wasn't comfortable with out in public. So I politely asked him to stop. I didn't want to make a scene, so I leaned in to whisper in his ear asking to stop. He got angry and whispered back, "You should consider yourself lucky that I'm going home with you. I could go home with any woman here if I wanted to." He couldn't, but has always been a dreamer, lol. I was taken aback as he's never said anything like that to me before. I get he was drunk, but still. Anger set in and I excused myself as if I was going to the bathroom. I ended up leaving and texted him to let him know I left. Unfortunately, he had arranged for me to drive 2 of his friends home too. Wouldn't have been an issue, but he also hadn't communicated that with me. Instead of calling an Uber or taxi like I assume he would, one of his friends called his wife. The wife had to wake their toddler up to go and pick them up. My boyfriend was furious when he came home, and still is this morning. He slept on the couch and we had an argument before he left for work. He says I embarrassed him by just up and leaving. He vehemently denies saying what he did, doesn't recall getting handsy, and insists he wasn't that drunk last night. I also got an angry text from the wife saying I was an a-hole for leaving them drunk and stranded, forcing her to wake her toddler up to go and pick them up. She also had a vague passive-aggressive Facebook post up calling me out. Now I'm questioning whether I overreacted. Maybe I should have just brushed off his comment because he was drunk and followed through on the commitment I made. I just felt so disrespected by what he said after I asked him to stop doing something that was making me uncomfortable. So am I the a-hole for leaving my drunk boyfriend and his friends stranded after the Super Bowl? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. Growing up with an alcoholic teaches you that what they say when they are drunk is what they really think all the time. Just now the filters are gone and they say it. Sick of people excusing drunk people saying awful crap. The booze didn't create the words. The booze set them free. Unfortunately, you're correct. I learned this lesson when my ex, an alcoholic, ultimately told me he loved his ex from his time in the service abroad more than he'd ever loved me. Even without that fact, he never asked her to take other friends home. She thought he'd catch an Uber, which is reasonable. The friend didn't have to wake his wife and kid. They're all in all, she could have figured it out safely with a ride share. She's getting the scapegoat because he doesn't love her anyway and wants a hotter girlfriend. He, in fact, just told her that himself. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Unless you stay with your boyfriend, then you'd be an a-hole to yourself. He caused the first issue by asking you to get him, and then disrespecting you by not being ready when you got there. You were very accommodating to stay as long as you did. Strike one. Then he made you uncomfortable and told you that you should be grateful for it because he could just leave you. That's 100% him being an a-hole. Strike two. Then he has the audacity to be angry with you, denying how big an a-hole he was, and failing to defend you to his friends and friend's wife? She's justifiably upset and no doubt was lied to about why you left, so she's upset with the wrong person. But that's your boyfriend's fault. Strike three. I'm sure you could list some sort of nice qualities he has that wouldn't be mentioned here. I don't see how they would redeem his disrespect.